First, our top story this half an hour, the State of the Union. President Trump is expected to tout the economy tonight, as well as make a plea for unity amid the deep divisions between Republicans and Democrats over border security, among other things. Joining us now to talk about what we can expect is former speechwriter for President George H.W. Bush and Atlas Society CEO Jennifer Grossman joining us. At the National Taxpayers Union, Mattie Duppler is here, senior fellow there. Good to see you both, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
Jennifer, you were a speechwriter for President H.W. Bush. Tell us first what goes into writing a speech like this. What do you think the president will be talking about tonight?
Well, the first thing that happens is about at least 5 weeks out, sometimes as long as 2 months out. The speechwriter and the team sits down with the president, gets his vision, writes an outline, and then goes and writes to it. It's often considered a very plum assignment, but it's really not the most fun speech to write because it ends up being written by committee. I always say that it's a speech where style and thematic integrity is sacrificed on the altar of the staffing process. That's when it goes out to all of the agencies and you just have an accumulated sea of editorial ink. So it's an honor to be a part of it, but it's really not a fun speech for speechwriters.
Yeah, I guess, Mattie, you want to put your best foot forward and talk about the positives out there, like the economy for President Trump, but you can't ignore some of the elephants in the room, like the government was shut down for 35 days.
Jennifer has detailed a very long process, but we know there's been a tectonic shift in the last month for this president. The 35-day shutdown really has set the stage for a State of the Union that's going to be different from any other. But those themes of unity and greatness, I mean, Americans never feel more unified than when their own personal circumstances are feeling good. So I would like to see the president really emphasize how well the economy is doing. Talk about the tax cut. We've had a lot of politicians kind of shy away from this. I think they should be embracing some of these economic agenda items that have really put American footing on the map in a different way for the first time in a decade. American workers would like to hear that reassurance, I think, from the president tonight.
And how not just the individual tax cuts, but it was the corporate tax cuts did boost capital investment in 2018 because of productivity increases. Wages are growing and should continue to grow even faster. Just last month, average hourly earnings were going at 3.2%, the fastest in a decade. When you factor in lower inflation, you're talking about real wage growth at about 4% in this country.
And
unemployment grew at 1.7%. The Wall Street Journal goes through all of this. But what his next step should be. And the Journal suggests, the editorial board, that he take the car tariffs off the table, that you need China and you need Europe to grow. Stop threatening them with car tariffs because that will hurt investment.
Well, what you said earlier was so smart. He's going to have to come up with an idea to keep this going. You know, how do you keep 3% going in the next 2 years?
Get a deal done with China and then spend the next 2 years making sure that China abides by what it agreed to. That's one thing that the Journal was pointing out this morning.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wasn't sure. Is
Jennifer Grossman, sure she is.
Jennifer, the question, just as a speechwriter, when you have the theme that the White House and the president wants called unity, right after a government shutdown, right after whether, either side wants to admit it or not, pretty much a blue wave during the midterms, and now what would be deemed by the Democrats certainly a shift to the left. It seems more of a word than the ability to really transcend that based on what's happened the last 35 days. How would you take that as a speechwriter? What would be some of the themes that you would think about to tout?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the words are actually less important than the delivery. If you think back to last year's State of the Union, I think we can all remember it well, but we probably don't remember a single line. What we do remember is the delivery. We remember the dynamics in the room. One of the best moments for the president of last year's speech was when he was just factually talking about historically low unemployment numbers among African Americans, and the Black Caucus just sat on their hands. It made them look terrible, and it made him look very magnanimous by contrast.
Well, what about all these guests? I mean, there's a big focus at tonight's address. Freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has announced that she will bring the activist who confronted Senator Jeff Flake over his Brett Kavanaugh confirmation vote last year to the State of the Union. Remember the activist that went in the elevator after Jeff Flake? Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw took a jab at AOC's proposed 70% income tax, tweeting this: "Should someone propose a 70% tax on the Patriots so that NFL competition is more fair and equal? Asking for a friend." Ocasio-Cortez fires back at Crenshaw, tweeting this: "The average NFL salary is $2.1 million, so most players would never experience a 70% rate. The owners who refuse to hire Kaepernick would, though." What's your reaction to this,
Well,
Matt?
it's interesting to me that Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is tipping her hand a little bit, saying that a $2.1 million salary wouldn't be enough to qualify you for her 70% top rate, just the owners. You know, it displays that this is policy making driven by envy and not by actual math. She's talking about trillions of dollars in new spending, but she's trying to argue that a new marginal tax rate will pay for it. We know that's simply not the case.
Well, can we just say Dan Crenshaw was making a joke?
Also that
fell flat, that didn't make any sense. It made 0 sense what Congressman Crenshaw was saying, but then AOC and all of her supporters took it literally and got mad and had to lecture the congressman about the way that the tax code works.
Right.
But there's
and
also...
and so the whole thing is just headache-inducing.
Yeah, but the bigger point is you're never going to get the money she's looking for her green project with just taxing $10 million.
I mean, that's the dirty little secret for the left. The notion that you can just tax
There's not enough
millionaires.
money.
Exactly right. If you want a welfare state like some of these countries in Europe, you need a tax that hits the middle class. You need a VAT. You need a tax that people at lower incomes are paying, and the left simply doesn't want to admit that.
Yeah.
Maddie, just to ask a quick question, though, 75% of this country is actually supportive of the marginal tax rate moving up to where AOC said it's 70%.
Right.
That is Republicans and Democrats going there, that they want to see a tax on the rich.
Right.
So it's hard to beat that that literally you're seeing a movement that's more in agreement with her on that.
Well,
and that President Trump once supported that idea.
You see those numbers fall, though, when you educate Americans on how much taxes are actually paid by the upper class and who's actually paying those taxes. The fact that the top 1% is actually shouldering most of the federal income tax burden
Yeah, that's right.
is something that we need to educate Americans on.
I think it's
frankly,
45%. The top 1% paying 45%. Top 10% pays 71%.
Right, and Democrats,
Of income tax.
Democrats have talked a big game on taxes without putting their money where their mouth is. Remember, President Obama, the most progressive president we've ever had, signed 85% of the Bush tax cuts into law permanently.
There you go. Jennifer Grossman, Mattie Duppler, great to see you both, ladies. Thank you so much. Stay tuned to Fox Business. We've got live coverage of the President's State of the Union tonight, kicking off at 7 p.m.